Shipium was founded in 2019 with a mission to build modern software for complex, data-driven supply chains. I spent the majority of my 19 years at Amazon as the main executive whose team built the most sophisticated supply chain tech stack that powers prime operations. A lot of how we think about building our software at Shipium comes from building complex supply chains at Amazon. Now we work across many sectors, serving Fortune 500 companies across biotech, manufacturing, automotive, and 3PL. When we think about the modern supply chain tech stack, we recognize that most organizations are already on some sort of journey. They're setting up data lakes, capturing transactional data, and establishing KPIs that reflect their business targets. The specific reporting tends to fit the business user. Commercial users are concerned about their contribution margin. The ops folks are concerned about their cost targets, and analysts will use this information to update rules in their dashboards. And while there's nothing wrong with dashboards, reports, or rules, it does leave a lot on the table in terms of how people are thinking about these tougher questions that affect their business. What are you actually trying to accomplish with your supply chain? What's your goal or objective? Does your supply chain actually improve your customer experience, or is it just a cost sink? And how do you resolve competing priorities between different parts of the organization? For example, speed and cost. These questions, combined with the increasing complexity of the supply chain, overwhelm these organizations because they don't have the visibility or optimizations required to drive the supply chain in the direction that's right for their business. What we see over and over again at Shipium is that organizations want to use the supply chain as a tool that supports their goals. They want it to be a customer-facing asset within the organization. At Shipium, we are obsessed with making the supply chain a strategic weapon that helps them hit their goals, as opposed to a fire that constantly needs to be tended. We spent years at Amazon building the framework that allowed us to thrive. Shipium represents the manifestation of these ideas, and we want to take you on this journey. Shipium provides a centralized platform for optimizing the logistics parts of the supply chain that we like to call the shipping operating system. On top of the platform are a collection of solutions that coordinate workflows and data across your existing systems to help turn shipping into a strategic value driver for your business. The platform is built on 3 fundamental pillars, which are inherently linked together through a flywheel. The first pillar is about being built from the ground up for customer experience. A lot of the problems we see with existing solutions is that they are not built with the end customer in mind. If you think about it, that is really the point of a supply chain. In retail, this means providing a delivery promise and then making sure that you have the back-end systems to actually hit that promise. But this can apply to any industry. Like in the context of automobile repair, the system needs to ensure that the part arrives before vehicle repair begins. Consumers now have higher expectations than ever before. They expect faster delivery times, accurate tracking, and transparent pricing. Meanwhile, fulfillment networks have become even more complex, incorporating store fulfillment, drop shipping, and now every address in the world can be a destination. To remain competitive, businesses must prioritize customer satisfaction. You can't retrofit customer centricity into your supply chain. It's not a feature. It's a mindset and approach that permeates all layers of the technology stack. We perfected what it means to be customer-centric in logistics and supply chain, and we've brought those same core concepts to Shipium. The first principle is pull versus push thinking, which starts with this idea that ops exists to serve the customer, which means that decisions are pulled up the supply chain based on customer experience versus pushed down in isolation. The second principle is keeping your promises. Your brand reputation is based on making promises to your customers and then keeping those promises. Shipium helps you make a promise on the front end to tell your customers and then keep that promise on the back end in an operationally efficient way. The third principle is constantly evaluating opportunity. As your network becomes more robust, your customer experience should actually improve. This requires continuous evaluation of what's possible. Our models and workflows automatically adjust to external conditions, and our simulations allow you to explore what's possible. The last principle is end-to-end visibility, which ensures you can actually control the customer experience. Without access to upstream decisions, it's hard to coordinate downstream outcomes. The next pillar is continuous optimization, which leads to an improved ratio of speed to cost. This is extremely important because shipping tends to be the highest line item on a given P&L and also tends to be one of the biggest growth drivers. When we talk to our customers, they often view their cost structure as being fixed in stone. This is an artifact of thinking of the supply chain as a static thing. The reality is, through a combination of policy changes, optimizations, contract changes, your cost curve is going to end up looking a lot different. Internal to Shipium, we refer to this as bending the cost curve. Shipium gives you the optimization tools, simulation environment, and visibility to continuously make improvements to your supply chain. There are several reasons why companies struggle to solve this problem, but we continuously see these three particular ones come up all the time. The first reason is competing organizational incentives. Companies are organized around functional groups like commercial, ops, transportation, etc. Each organization has their own KPIs like COGS, turns, click to deliver, etc. The reality is that these KPIs are often pulling against each other. What we ultimately saw at Amazon was the only way to solve this was to build the modeling capability to test this hypothesis. At Shipium, we have a very rich simulation environment meant to model out complex scenarios. We do this by actually running modeled transactions through the system to achieve the absolute highest possible fidelity. This allows you to understand how targeting specific regions or customer segments actually affects your business. The second reason is companies still try to solve probabilistic problems deterministically. Supply chains operate in the physical world, and the physical world is probabilistic. The traditional way to manage this is to build more and more complex rule sets. Rules have their place, but as these rule sets become more and more complex, they tend to collapse on one another when they're trying to model stochastic variables. At Amazon, we only solved this when we started applying machine learning to these problem sets. An example of Amazon applying ML was when we started modeling the time it took to get from one zip to another with a 95% surety level to support the Prime program. So at Shipium, we follow a very similar playbook. We have a dedicated data science team. We represent things that are stochastic with machine learning models, and that's a huge part of our offering in terms of part of the toolkit that helps the customer solve their particular problem. The third reason that companies struggle to optimize is they don't have enough big data. These models increase in accuracy as they get more data. This includes recent transactions as well as longer-term trends. We see our customers struggling with collecting and managing their own data. We also see an opportunity to share data between shippers to improve the overall network. Shipium acts as a central repository and feeds this data back into the models to increase the precision and predictability. The third pillar of a modern supply chain is automation. When a company gets the right optimizations and customer experience in place, these are injected into the existing system that automates the decisions to hit the objectives of the business. A lot of the decisions that Shipium makes are based on self-adjusting models. These models update as the world changes and then reflect that new reality. The other part of the equation is the codified workflows and rules that map your business processes. Automation is essential for flexibility and responsiveness. It becomes the way that you react dynamically to transportation issues, customer behavior, or changes to the network. This is important for exogenous shocks, like events like the Suez Canal, but it's also equally as important for just regular changes to the business, like a change to a fuel surcharge. With workflows and models in place, companies can really lean into the area that automation really shines, which is repeatable, scalable processes. Automation is the path to profitable scale. Automation is normally thought of as removing work from humans, but the other aspect of this, automation actually creates room for you to focus on strategy. When you know that your supply chain is in control, you can quickly react to changes in the world. You can now look at structural changes that improves your supply chain, that puts your business in a strategic advantage. The old way of thinking is more about a linear series of steps where each decision is pushed down to the next person to kind of deal with the last person's problems. We think of the supply chain as a circular feedback loop where customer experience is always pushing operations, and operation is providing enough information such that customer experience can target as much as possible. Once again, a lot of this comes back to organizational dynamics. Operations tends to be more concerned about costs. Commercial side of the business tends to be more concerned about revenue. Both are acting in a rational way, but neither are really thinking about the whole picture. At Amazon, we figured out pretty early that you have to think about merchandising and cost together. We were constantly pushing boundaries on customer experience. These improvements led to revenue increases that usually offset the costs. More importantly, once operations had a new target to work against, most of the headwinds from the initial increase fell through as they optimized and altered their operations. The other direction is important also. When merchandising understands the cost structure of operations, they can be more specific about how to target. For example, when you shop on Amazon, you'll get a different delivery promise based on where you live. You might even get different search results based on where you live. This push in both directions is what we call the flywheel. Merchandising should always be pushing boundaries on customer experience, and merchandising should always be trying to understand the cost structure of operations in more detail so they can target more efficiently. There is always a journey involved. When we work with our customers, we usually see that the first step might be something like establishing a date-specific promise for their website and then putting in the back-end machinery to actually be able to hit that promise. But as we titrate up, we're going to potentially target a specific region. Each one of these steps is going to require changes to people and process, but ultimately the organization will get more and more used to this type of procedure. After spending 20 years at Amazon building the program powering Prime, we're seeing the same evolution play out with Shipium's customers. The market is leading us to the same core needs. 1, connect the customer experience to the supply chain. Number 2, optimize the back end to bend the cost curve. And number 3, automate with workflows to create flexibility and create time for strategy. Shipium's end-to-end platform gives companies a new operating model focused on these principles. It provides the workflow and data necessary to make a promise you can keep and keep the promise that you made.